Donald Trump's comments about banning Muslims coming into the United States is sparking debate on and off the campaign trail. You may remember last week, Republican strategist and CBS News contributor Frank Luntz spoke to a panel of Muslim Americans about the anti-Muslim sentiment in the country. We have more of that provocative discussion, including this exchange about the government's role in the rise of ISIS.
Are you Muslim first or American first?
I am an American Muslim. I can be both at the same time. I don't choose one over the other. I am an American Muslim. I am both simultaneously.
Be 10 things, Frank. It's not a fair question. I'm sorry.
Are you a Christian or are you American? Or whatever religion you are. Honestly.
That's a question for everyone. American is my nationality, and Muslim is my faith. And I can be that, and I can also be Palestinian at the same time.
Could it ever come against?
Absolutely not.
So
I am Muslim and American, very comfortable.
America lives under the Constitution, okay?
Not under the Bible.
Not under the Bible, not under the Quran, not under the Torah. It lives under the Constitution.
No matter
Islam and the Constitution can coexist.
So there's no one here who supports Sharia law?
What's your definition?
Look, Frank, go back to that earlier question.
One
Go
at a
back to that
time.
earlier question. Look, we all have to realize, guys, the folks outside of these doors, they're not going to be able to understand this. We will say today that Islam does not equal terrorism. But when you go outside, the Trumps of the world will believe that. They need demonstrative proof, which they will never get, because folks that are Muslim are committing these violent acts. So there's one argument that folks like us should condemn these acts. But I call upon all of the Republicans to condemn them, to condemn those acts and to condemn the Trumps who speak out against the Muslims who are endangering our national security by doing so.
As an American Muslim, I really want to ask my government about how they created the conditions that allowed for these extremist groups to come about, right? Like, I question the militarism of our country. I question the invasion of other countries from our country. And as an American, I feel like that's my responsibility.
I think it's the wrong attitude. I think that, you can't blame it on the creation of this stuff, everything on the United States foreign policy. I think...
So why is it okay for them to blame it on us?
Well, two wrongs don't make a right.
You know why?
It's neither is right.
It's okay because it's getting them votes right now. It's okay because we're doing this right now. I'm not home with my family having dinner. I'm here having to defend myself.
I think the American people are capable of understanding that Muslims are terrorists. And I think something that's been missing from the media conversation, most ISIS recruits, most terrorist recruits actually don't know much about their religion before they get recruited. Usually they're very uneducated, and then they meet one radical cleric and he defines the religion for them.
The Islamophobic comics that ensue after things like the Paris attack are exactly what ISIS wants, because it feeds into their narrative that there is a war between Islam and the West, and that's how they gain more recruits.
There's one thing that I would actually blame the Muslim American community on, and that is not combating the policies put in place domestically and foreign. But we're always rushed to combat Islamophobia or combat radical terrorism. With San Bernardino attacks, right? Muslim organizations are already on the forefront condemning these terrorism attacks without getting all the facts out. But we want to talk about terrorism today. Look at the FBI sting operations, where FBI is actually scouting mentally ill Muslim individuals who are poor, who have history of drug abuse, to create a terrorist plot, give them the money, the weapons, the plot, and say, oh, look, we caught these terrorist suspects. That is completely ridiculous, and I want Muslims to speak up on this issue.
I mean, she makes a fantastic point, the idea of FBI entrapment. This is not a subject that the public is aware of. I mean, so many of these quote-unquote plots that are uncovered are actually designed by the FBI, funded by the FBI, and then they take great credit in front of the cameras. Oh, we stopped this plot, praise be to us, yada, yada, yada.
How many of you agree with him? I want to show of hands.
It's true.
So you think the FBI is making this stuff up?
We don't. There's proof and evidence of these things.
It's Frank, this is public. This is public information. This is not a conspiracy theory. And this is very well known, but again, it doesn't fit the narrative. And Americans don't want to know this.
I just want to push back on one
Because
thing.
I don't think the public is going to believe that.
Let me tell you, I come from a community where there was an FBI.
But I want to clear that they do. Go ahead.
Well, I would just also like to add on that the FBI also preys on like mentally ill people, low-income people, people who
They prey on them.
Yes, and that's pretty much
Informants
just
and
how
mosques.
certain clerics, they pray.
Most Americans think that the FBI is the only thing that's keeping them safe
and
from
it
those
is.
who
Frank,
want to.
Frank.
That's not what he's saying.
Frank, can I just add here one thing?
Go ahead.
Back to, I want to say Muslim Americans, and we're doing the same thing. We're generalizing ourselves right now. There are Muslims that have been at the forefront of civil rights fights in this country, including lawsuits against the New York Police Department for our unwarranted surveillance, passing landmark civil rights legislation just recently to reform the New York Police Department. But what I want to say is that these issues are public issues. There have been investigative reports. There have been policies that continue to target Muslim communities and push us to the margins of society. You want to combat terrorism? You need Muslims. So keep pushing us out of the picture, and let's see if you can combat terrorism without our community. And that's what's happening right now.
As someone who's worked with these national Muslim organizations like the Muslim Public Affairs Council, I'd like to push back on that and say that we have been on the forefront of these pushes against domestic and foreign policies.
Frank, as an American and a Muslim, we're your last line of defense. And that's what we'd really like to be addressed as. A line of defense that we can draw the line in the sand and say, this is where we are, this is where we push back on terrorism. ISIS has an ideology that's not Islam. They've crafted their own vision of reality. And that vision of reality is throwing everyone else under the bus. In order for us to stop this, we need to get away from rhinos like Donald Trump, and we need to start looking at how we solve these problems together as Americans.
If you want to see more of that discussion, you can go to cbsnews.com.